A small neighborhood in the American suburbs. Nestled on the outskirts of Detroit, Michigan, lies a working-class neighborhood that most outsiders would overlook without a second glance. Here, weather-beaten wooden houses line Maple Street, their porches sagging gently, each one bearing the unique marks of the families who've called them home for decades. The lawns are modest, some cared for meticulously, others overrun with wild grass and toys forgotten by the kids next door. In early mornings and late afternoons, the hum of old pickup trucks mixes with the laughter of children, racing their bikes down the cracked sidewalks, their shouts echoing through the air with the unrestrained energy of youth. The community is tight-knit in the way only small American neighborhoods can be. Neighbors know each other, not just by name, but by habit. A wave exchanged over a shared fence, a casserole handed over in times of trouble, backyard barbecues with music drifting lazily across the yards in summer. There are whispers of old gossip and new secrets shared during coffee at the local diner, where the waitress pours refills without asking, knowing everyone's story and favorite breakfast order. Autumn paints this neighborhood in warm golds and reds, with leaves crunching underfoot and pumpkins on every stoop, while winter brings light displays strung from sagging roofs and friendly competitions to shovel each other's driveways. It's a place of modest dreams, a place where people work hard, love their families, struggle, hope, and sometimes learn to start over. For Lisa and her young son, this neighborhood offered both the comfort of familiarity and the quiet judgment of neighbors who'd seen it all. In a world that often felt too big and impersonal, this little pocket of suburban America thrived on shared histories, unspoken understanding, and the little acts of kindness that tethered everyone together. No tragedy or triumph, no matter how private, escaped the invisible web of community that bound Maple Street. And so, amid the simple routines and everyday struggles, life went on, setting the stage for stories of heartbreak, resilience, and redemption to quietly unfold. The figure of a single mother, Lisa Murray was the kind of woman people noticed without quite knowing why. At 32, she moved through life with a quiet determination that belied the weight she carried on her narrow shoulders. Her hair, a tumble of sun-faded blonde, was usually pulled back in a hurried ponytail, the kind of practical style favored by women too busy to fuss over themselves. There was a depth to her blue eyes, a resilience forged by hardship and heartbreak, but also an undercurrent of warmth, an unfailing kindness for those she loved. Since the day her marriage ended, Lisa's world had condensed to a small, sunlit apartment above an aging hardware store on the corner of Maple Street. Each morning, she was up before dawn, packing a lunch for her 8-year-old son, Ethan, and slipping handwritten notes of encouragement into his backpack. She juggled 2 part-time jobs, waitressing at a local diner and stocking shelves at a grocery store, never once complaining about the exhaustion that threatened to overtake her at the end of each day. At night, after Ethan was asleep and the world settled into its quiet, Lisa would sit at the wobbly kitchen table, poring over online classes, determined to build a better life for them both. Despite her struggles, Lisa refused to let hardship define her. She was quick to volunteer for the school bake sale or lend a sympathetic ear to a neighbor's troubles, even when time and money were tight. Her laughter, rare but bright, could light up an entire room, especially when she watched Ethan play or tell one of his wild stories. Lisa made a habit of cultivating hope in small ways, planting window boxes with marigolds in spring, painting over scuffed
I can't
walls
believe
in
you would do
cheerful
this to me after
colors,
everything.
and turning every
You made
simple
your
family
choices,
meal
Brandon.
into
Now
a
you live with it.
celebration, even if dinner was
We
just
both know
boxed
why you're here.
macaroni and cheese. Lisa's presence in the neighborhood was
I
a
did nothing
quiet
wrong.
but steady reassurance. Other mothers
We need to
admired
find
her
him.
determination, and children sought out her gentle encouragement. She had learned, through necessity and through love for her son, that strength could be soft and persistence could be gentle. Though she sometimes felt the sting of loneliness, especially on cold winter evenings, Lisa tucked those feelings away, choosing instead to focus on the little
Mr. Harper,
victories.
stop right there.
The first A on Ethan's report card, the paycheck that stretched just far enough, the kindnesses she both gave and received in return. Through it all, Lisa became a symbol of perseverance and dignity, a single mother navigating daily life with grace, grit, and a quiet hope that better days were just around the corner. A memory of bitter betrayal. The wound of betrayal is a quiet ache, a scar that throbs beneath even the most ordinary days. For
This is
Lisa,
all the evidence.
the memory of what happened 3 years ago could still catch her off guard, taking her breath away with the sharpness of pain that time never fully dulled. Back then, sunlight streamed into a
Just need to
home
get out of here.
that felt, for a while, almost happy. She and Tom had been together for nearly a decade,
And I
old
just
college
remember
sweethearts
thinking, how
who
could he have
believed,
done that?
as young people do,
It was
that grit
completely out of
and love
character.
could conquer anything. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real. They had Ethan together. They got through lean years and moves, late-night arguments, and exhausted reconciliations. And in the way of so many working-class couples, they learned to stretch grocery money, to share small triumphs, a repaired sink, a letter from school, a moment at the end of the day when laughter returned after tension. Jenny had always been a part of that picture. Lisa's best friend since childhood. Jenny was as familiar to her as the creak on the stairs or the smell of cinnamon rolls in October. They were inseparable as little girls, drifting closer in high school, sharing secrets that seemed sacred and everlasting. Jenny brought wine on Lisa's wedding night. She was Ethan's godmother, the one who sat with Lisa through long hospital hours during his first fever. In that web of friendship and family, trust ran deep. So much so that Lisa never thought to doubt either of them. Looking back, the signs had been there. Tiny hairline cracks in the glass of Lisa's
Mr.
world
Harper, can you
that she
confirm the
chose
allegations?
not to see. Tom grew distant. Phone calls that went unanswered. Hours unaccounted for. Jenny, meanwhile, became cagey about her visits, sometimes slipping out early, sometimes showing up flushed and distracted, her laugh just a little too forced. Whenever Lisa asked, the answers were simple: work stress, fatigue, the changing demands of early adulthood. All it took was one autumn afternoon to rip away the fragile facade. Lisa discovered it, not through a screaming fight or a tearful confession, but in silence. The weight of an empty kitchen when Tom failed to come home, a missed call that rang and rang, the brisk echo of Jenny's voice on the other end, brittle and evasive. She remembered it in flashes, the way Tom looked at Jenny across the table, the quiet inside jokes, a touch that lingered too long. It all came together in a crashing wave when she saw them together, not hand in hand, but close enough. There was no dramatic confrontation. Instead, there was a heavy, stunned stillness that overtook Lisa, leaving her cold and sick, her hands trembling as she listened to confessions that spilled out more from guilt than from love. Tom admitted he and Jenny had fallen for each other, a phrase so absurdly simple that it made Lisa want to laugh and scream all at once. Fell for each other, as if love just swept them away. as if it demanded nothing of loyalty or choice. What followed was a time Lisa could only recall in fragments. There were days she woke with hope, thinking perhaps it was just a cruel nightmare. But reality was always waiting, indifferent and relentless. Tom moved out, leaving behind the echo of his boots in the hallway, the scent of his aftershave hanging in the air. Jenny sent apology texts, stilted and formal, never daring to show up in person. Friends in the neighborhood took sides or withdrew, unsure what to say. At night, after Ethan was asleep, Lisa would sit in the dark on the worn couch and let herself feel it all. The rage, the humiliation, the hollow ache of abandonment. She replayed every conversation, every gesture, looking for the moment she could have changed the outcome, desperate to understand what she'd missed. Sometimes, the anger gave her energy. She hurled plates in the empty kitchen, screamed into her pillow, wrote letters to Tom and Jenny that she never sent. Other times, she would simply sit with Ethan curled against her side, warmth and comfort, battling loneliness as the TV flickered in the background. Through it all, Lisa discovered the true cruelty of betrayal. It was not only the loss of love, but the loss of certainty. She became suspicious of kindness, wary of affection, and unsure about her own worth. Every time a neighbor mentioned Tom or Jenny, in subtle, knowing ways, Lisa felt her defenses harden. She forced herself to smile, to keep moving, to refuse the pity that glimmered in people's eyes. But hidden beneath the jagged pain, something else began to take shape. A resolve made of scar tissue and pride. Lisa refused to be defined by how others had wronged her. She cleaned out the closets, repainted the faded walls, donated Tom's belongings to a local charity. When Jenny tried to reach out, Lisa let the calls go to voicemail, listening just long enough to confirm that there would be no apology strong enough, no explanation good enough. She put her energy where it mattered, into Ethan and into herself. If betrayal was a wound, Lisa realized, then moving forward was a kind of healing. But it wasn't linear, and it wasn't easy. There were mornings when anger surged anew, when the memory of Tom and Jenny together made her clench her fists on the steering wheel. Some holidays stung more than others, especially those first Christmases and birthdays spent as a party of two, traditions reshaped out of necessity. Slowly, Lisa allowed herself to grieve, not just for the marriage, not just for the friendship, but for the person she had once been. Open, hopeful, certain of where she belonged. She permitted small joys into her world again. She signed up for night classes, not just to build a new future, but to rediscover who she was beyond being a wife, a best friend, even a mother. She let herself laugh at Ethan's jokes, take pride in mowing the lawn on her own, and, occasionally, cry in the shower when no one could hear. Eventually, the anger receded, giving way to something quieter, acceptance. She could see Tom and Jenny at a distance, recognize the pain they'd caused, and still choose, for her own sake, not to let that chapter define her whole story. She became someone tougher, more self-sufficient, and unexpectedly gentle. A woman who knew both what it was to be broken and what it was to put herself back together. The memory of betrayal lingered, not as an open wound, but as a line in the story of her life. Even now, when certain smells or songs brought it flooding back, Lisa allowed herself a breath and kept moving. She bore no illusions about the past, but neither would she be trapped there. In the quiet of her small apartment above Maple Street, with her son safely asleep and a new list of dreams to chase, Lisa looked nothing like the woman Tom and Jenny once knew. And that, she decided, was the sweetest kind of revenge. the absolute certainty that she was more than what she had lost. The journey of rising and transformation. The weeks and months after the betrayal felt endless and raw, as though Lisa were learning to walk again in a world stripped of familiar landmarks. Every day demanded new strength. Every morning required her to push past invisible walls of doubt and exhaustion. Yet beneath the layers of hurt was a determination that took root quietly. A resolve that whispered, "You have to keep going." Lisa became an early riser, her alarm buzzing before the first trace of sun touched the rooftops of Maple Street. In the kitchen's hush, she found a routine that grounded her: brewing coffee, making breakfast, and writing a quick note to tuck into Ethan's lunchbox. These notes, sometimes a silly doodle, sometimes just a few words of encouragement, became tiny rituals of hope. They were reminders to Ethan that, despite everything, he was loved, and life could still surprise them with goodness. After dropping Ethan off at school, the day truly began. Lisa juggled 2 jobs, not out of ambition, but necessity. At Billy's Diner, where the locals ate breakfast and swapped stories, Lisa moved among regulars with practiced efficiency. She learned to carry heavy trays and wear a smile even when her feet ached or her mind drifted to darker places. There was comfort in the routine, in the rhythm of coffee cups clinking, in the murmur of friendly conversation. The tips weren't much, but every dollar mattered. By afternoon, she clocked in at the supermarket, stocking shelves and organizing displays under the flicker of fluorescent lights. It wasn't glamorous work, but the steady income and the simple camaraderie with other workers helped Lisa feel less alone. They called her Supermom sometimes, a nickname that embarrassed her, but also gave her a quiet pride. Lisa's home, an aging apartment above Davis Hardware, became her sanctuary and her canvas for small acts of renewal. At first, everything reminded her of loss: the echoing emptiness when Ethan visited his father, the faded spots on the walls where photos had hung. But Lisa refused to let the past claim her space. She spent weekends scrubbing, repainting, and rearranging, choosing vibrant colors and new curtains from thrift stores. She planted a box of marigolds outside her window, their bright orange blooms a little defiant against the gray of the street. The changes inside Lisa unfolded in more subtle ways. There were setbacks, a burned dinner here, an unexpected bill there, moments when loneliness pressed in like winter chill. But each problem overcome, no matter how small, built new confidence. When the old heater broke, Lisa watched online tutorials and fixed it herself, shocking the building's handyman and delighting Ethan, who was convinced his mom could do anything. Evenings were reserved for togetherness and growth. Homework spread across the kitchen table, laughter echoing over homemade pizza, even if it was just from a frozen box. After Ethan was asleep, Lisa took online classes, sometimes nodding off over her laptop, but persistent. She'd once studied social work in college, before life intervened. Now, she chased a dream of completing her degree, hoping one day to help families going through what she had survived. Community played a role in her journey, too. Lisa always made time for neighbors, believing in the currency of kindness. She traded home-baked muffins for help with car trouble. She volunteered at Ethan's school for bake sales and field trips, her friendly presence slowly shifting how others saw her, not as a woman to be pitied, but as a symbol of resilience. Her circle grew to include other single parents, retirees, and new families struggling like she once had, all quietly rooting for each other's wins. Still, there were nights when the past crept back unbidden. Sometimes the loneliness gnawed, especially on holidays or at school events where happy couples seemed to fill the room. Sometimes anger burned, at Tom, at Jenny, at a world that let betrayal happen
Emily,
with so little
I
warning.
know you're investigating
On the
this.
toughest evenings, Lisa
with
allowed
you.
herself to feel the weight, but she didn't let it sink her. She'd pour a glass of cheap wine, call her sister in Ohio, or simply sit in the quiet, honoring all she'd endured. Transformation also came in how Lisa viewed herself. Once, her self-worth was tangled up in other people's opinions, in being a wife, a best friend, a caretaker. That changed with every independent choice and every small act of defiance. There was dignity in paying her own bills, in repairing what others thought she couldn't, in shouldering both the discipline and the joy of parenting Ethan. She began to see herself not as someone left behind, but as someone who had found a truer path by necessity. Her relationship with Ethan deepened as well. The two became a team, learning together. They invented new traditions: pancake breakfasts on Saturdays, game night every Friday, dance parties in the kitchen. Lisa shared honest moments with her son, not every detail of heartbreak, but enough to show him that pain was temporary, that people could grow stronger and kinder after adversity. It was important to her that Ethan knew it was okay to struggle, and even more important, that he saw her moving forward anyway. The world outside their small apartment started to look brighter. Lisa's manager at Billy's Diner noticed her dedication and offered her more reliable hours. Her grades in online courses improved, and she began to mentor a younger coworker dealing with troubles of her own. When winter came, Lisa organized a coat drive for struggling families, quietly dropping spare jackets on doorsteps. In spring, she helped plant a community garden, even as her hands still carried the faint scars from work and worry. There were tangible milestones. The first vacation trip she could afford for Ethan, a rented cabin by a lake. The day she paid off the last of her old medical bills. The moment she was invited to speak at a school assembly about resilience. Her palms sweaty, but her head held high. Each hard-earned victory became a thread in the new tapestry of Lisa's life, woven with hope and authenticity. Looking back, Lisa sometimes marveled at the path behind her. From those bitter, broken days to mornings where sunlight glinted off clean walls and laughter filled the rooms. Her story was never about perfection, but about perseverance, reinvention, and the certainty that, whatever happened, she and Ethan would always find their way. In quiet moments, Lisa understood something she never had before, that sometimes the strongest kind of healing comes not from forgetting the past, but from building something better atop its ruins. Her journey, in all its complexity, was a testament to the resilience of the human heart, a daily declaration that, with enough grit and hope, transformation was not only possible, but inevitable. A twist of fate for the betrayer's years had passed since Lisa's life unraveled, and the small suburban neighborhood had all but moved on. Seasons turned, bringing harvest colors, thick snows, and the hum of everyday survival. Lisa and Ethan thrived steadily, their lives stitched together by perseverance, community, and hope. Yet, life, with its uncanny sense of symmetry, had not overlooked the ones who had once brought her so much pain. For Tom and Jenny, the dream had not played out as expected. At first, their lives together seemed charmed by the reckless hope that comes with starting over, a promise of fresh beginnings. With Lisa gone, they thought shed the shadows of shame and found some new, electric happiness. Late-night takeouts in a modest rental, secret smiles, freedom from the burden of secrecy. But reality, as it often does, chipped away at the glossy veneer. Tom lost his job at the metal fabrication plant during a round of layoffs that hit the region hard. Unemployment ran high, and the severance pay barely stretched 3 months. Resumes were sent, interviews attended, but nothing came back. Jenny, who'd worked as a tech in a dentist office, was let go when the practice changed hands, and the new owner brought in his own staff. In a matter of weeks, the secure foundation under their feet crumbled. The bills arrived like clockwork. Rent chewed through their savings. Groceries were abundant one week, then sparse the next. Credit cards ticked upward, balances growing like an itch beneath the skin. They tried to keep up appearances, smiling at neighbors, pretending all was well. But in the silence of their living room, old disagreements surfaced. The thrill of forbidden love faded in the blue glow of overdue notices and empty cupboards. Without the buffer of stable work, the cracks in their relationship widened. Both of them, haunted by guilt they never truly discussed. Jenny restless, wandering the apartment late into the night. Tom, irritable, quick to anger over tiny frustrations. The very thing that had united them in secret now seemed to isolate them among friends and family. Most people kept their distance, wary of being drawn into old drama or new misfortune. The final blow came on a bitter winter morning when their landlord left a bright orange eviction notice taped to their door. There was no money left, nowhere else to go. Their small circle had shrunk, and each awkward call to family members or old acquaintances ended with cold refusals. Desperation forced them to an undeniable, almost unthinkable conclusion. They would have to ask Lisa for help. It was Jenny, ironically, who suggested it. She's doing all right now, isn't she? Maybe she'd, just for a little while. Tom hesitated, his pride in shreds, but hunger and the promise of shelter for just a week or two overruled shame. The conversation was awkward and halting, but Lisa, when she answered the phone, listened all the way through. There was a pause, a long, loaded silence. Lisa did not sneer or hang up. She did not rage or gloat. Instead, her voice was measured, almost businesslike. You need a place. I have space in my garage. It's not much, but it's warm. You can stay until you get back on your feet. Jenny and Tom arrived the next afternoon, with their lives packed in bags and boxes. The garage was clean, if bare. A cot for each, stacks of blankets, a small space heater humming in the corner. Lisa had even left some food on a small table. It was, in pure logistical terms, more than they deserved. But it was nothing like coming home. Lisa's boundaries were clear from the start. She did not invite them into the house. Their meals were taken in the garage, not the kitchen. She did not join them for coffee or conversation. When their paths crossed, she was polite, but impersonal. A brisk hello, a reminder about trash pickup, a head nod in lieu of friendly banter. The bustling, chaotic warmth of Lisa's home was off limits, and from the windows, Jenny and Tom could hear the quiet laughter of Lisa and Ethan together, muffled but unmistakable. In the first week, Tom tried to make amends. He offered to fix a leaky faucet and shovel the drive in the morning snow. Jenny tried too, sometimes leaving notes for Lisa, apologies, invitations to talk, even an awkward thank you card. Lisa acknowledged each gesture with the same calm remove. She did not punish them, but she did not comfort them either. Her kindness was precise, without the lingering warmth of old intimacy. The community watched with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Some neighbors remembered the scandal from years back. Others, newer to the street, simply accepted the new arrangement as an oddity, an estranged couple helping the people who'd once blown their world apart. The old diner crowd whispered, but nobody intervened. Winter wore on, bitter and gray. Resources in the garage grew thin as job prospects stalled again and again. Their shame deepened. After a month, Jenny mustered the courage to ask Lisa if they could share a meal inside on a particularly cold night. Lisa stood in the half-open doorway, her expression unreadable. "I'm sorry, but that's not something I'm comfortable with. I hope you understand," she said, her tone gentle but resolute. It was the final, unmistakable boundary. Lisa's actions never crossed over into cruelty, but neither did she offer them the forgiveness or return of trust that perhaps they quietly hoped for. Tom and Jenny had to confront their own choices in the hollow solitude of the garage, a stark contrast to the lively home only a few steps away. There were no scenes, no shouting matches, no midnight confrontations in the snow. There was only the relentless truth of Lisa's independence, her right to extend as much help as she desired, and nothing more. The old power dynamics had vanished. For Lisa, this was not revenge in the melodramatic sense. It was justice, measured and contained. By the time the first hints of spring appeared, tiny green blades breaking through the curbside snow, Tom and Jenny had scraped together enough for a deposit on a basement studio farther across town. When they left, Lisa helped them load the last of their boxes into a borrowed truck. She wished them luck, her face kind but detached. In the garage's echoing emptiness, Jenny and Tom realized what they'd lost. Not only security or physical comfort, but the sense of belonging and warmth they'd once taken for granted. Lisa had offered them dignity, but nothing more. And as they drove away, ghosts of their choices trailing behind, like lingering snowflakes, they both understood, in a way words could never reach, that trust broken is a debt that is almost never repaid, a cold but dignified retribution. Lisa had never been one for grand acts of revenge. Her pain, searing as it was, did not turn her bitter or vengeful. If anything, it taught her the value of boundaries and the necessity of dignity. When Tom and Jenny came to her door, without eye contact, pride already decimated, she did not see an opportunity for payback in the traditional sense. She saw two people broken by their own choices, as fragile as she once was. Still, the past could not be erased, and Lisa was determined that any help she gave would be on her terms, and hers alone. The garage became a stark symbol of these new terms. It was not a home, not a warm kitchen full of laughter, but a bare-bones shelter, a physical manifestation of Lisa's boundaries. The space was utilitarian. 2 fold-out cots, a battered but clean rug, stacks of thrift store blankets neatly arranged. On a makeshift table stood a kettle and a few packets of instant soup. No photographs of family, no welcome mat. It was as if the warmth of domestic life stopped at the threshold, and this was intentional. From the beginning, Lisa set clear expectations. "You're welcome to stay," she told them that first evening, her tone calm and unwavering. "But only in the garage. Please don't go into the house. I need my space, and Ethan needs his peace." The words hung in the air, absolute, yet not cruel. Tom nodded wearily. Jenny pulled her coat tighter around her, and the deal was silently understood. The first week brought awkward encounters. Lisa would pass through the garage in the mornings on her way to the laundry, greeting them with a polite nod, but never stopping for conversation. Tom offered to fix the wobbly board on the back porch. Lisa thanked him, but insisted it could wait. Jenny tried baking banana bread, leaving a loaf at the kitchen door. Lisa accepted it, but made no promise of friendship rekindled. Every interaction was measured. Lisa never once raised her voice, never gloated, never let her bitterness show. There was a strange grace in her distance, a quiet authority that made her seem both approachable and untouchable. The neighborhood noticed. Some whispered about Lisa's frosty hospitality, while others expressed admiration for her strength, seeing in her a woman who refused to be anyone's victim. Even in forgiveness, the small, everyday rituals of the household changed subtly. Lisa kept the doors locked at all times, something she'd never done before. She prepared dinner with Ethan and ate in the warm, yellow-lit kitchen, their laughter sometimes slipping through the walls to the garage where Tom and Jenny sat across from each other, eating soup from mismatched mugs. At night, Lisa would tuck Ethan into bed with a story. The sounds of Ethan's giggles, a reminder of who she was now living for. For all her restraint, there was power in Lisa's silence. Tom felt it in the hollow ache that came when he heard Ethan's voice through the garage wall. Jenny felt it in the small but unmistakable chasm where friendship used to be. The isolation was acute. The garage was warm enough against the winter, but lacked soul. And as the days passed, their hope of regaining Lisa's trust faded. They tried to reach out in little ways. Tom left a note on Lisa's windshield, offering to shovel her driveway, but found it already clear. Done by her, or perhaps by a neighbor, quietly looking out for the single mother upstairs. Jenny, once so full of stories and gossip, found herself unable to even make small talk when their paths crossed in the driveway. Lisa treated them with the civility one gives to strangers. Not enemies, no animosity, but no warmth either. Holidays came and went. On Christmas, Lisa hung lights in her window, while Tom and Jenny watched from their unadorned quarters, the ache of exclusion sharper than any angry words. They could hear faint music, Ethan's delighted squeals, the sound of plates being cleared and stories being shared, sounds of a family that had rebuilt itself, stronger and smaller, but content. The community observed, but kept its distance, unsure how to intervene, or if they should. Some neighbors, recalling old wounds, found quiet satisfaction in this delicate balance of justice. Others, new to the story, simply noted that Lisa was generous enough to offer shelter, but strong enough to define its limits. Lisa's strength became the talk of the diner, where waitresses and patrons alike speculated about her motives. But Lisa never shared the details. Instead, she kept her head high, continued her routines, and focused on her future with Ethan. Each day, apart from the chaos of the past, became another layer of self-respect, another small victory in a long battle. As the weeks stretched into a month, Tom and Jenny's situation grew more desperate. When food began to run low and job leads led nowhere, Jenny found the courage to ask for a meal at Lisa's table, seeking some sign of thaw in the old friendship. Lisa answered the door fully, face to face, composed, and kind. "I'm sorry, Jenny. I can offer you this roof, but I need the rest of my life to be mine. I hope you can understand." Jenny did, her tears falling silently as she returned to the cold garage. Inside, Lisa felt the old pain flicker up, but pushed it aside. Boundaries give shape to forgiveness, she reminded herself. She had given what dignity allowed, but refused to surrender one more piece of her heart. Through it all, Ethan quietly watched and learned. He saw his mother's compassion, but also her self-respect. He saw that kindness could come with rules, that caring for someone did not mean sacrificing one's own peace. Lisa hoped this would be a lesson he'd carry long after the garage stood empty again. Eventually, spring's thaw brought relief. Tom and Jenny scraped together a deposit for a small studio apartment across town. As they packed, Lisa helped. Efficient, practical, fair to the end. On the day of their departure, she wished them genuine luck. They thanked her for her help, hesitated as if expecting more, but received only her steady gaze. There was closure, but not reconciliation. When the garage was empty, Lisa cleaned it out herself, scrubbing every corner, airing the space until the scent of their stay dissipated into the bright air of a new season. She felt neither triumph nor regret, only the steadiness that came from doing what was right for herself and not what was easy for others. The doors of her heart remained open for her son, for new friends, and for the future she was determined to claim. For Tom and Jenny, the lesson was a hard but necessary one, that dignity and kindness given freely are both a gift and a limit, and that some things lost, like trust and belonging, cannot be restored by mere proximity. In her cold but dignified retribution, Lisa found not vindication, but the deepest proof of her own strength, the end of forgiveness and growth. Time, Lisa discovered, does not erase pain, but it does soften the edges, transforming sharp wounds into faded lines and lessons that move quietly beneath the surface of daily life. The years since her world had been upended became not just a marker of survival, but a testament to life's capacity for repair, reinvention, and grace. Lisa's everyday reality was now defined by warmth, stability, and the kind of hard-won contentment that comes after a long season of storms. Her little apartment above the hardware store resonated with laughter once again. The kitchen, with its second-hand table, chipped mugs, and the constant aroma of coffee or something baking, was more than just a place of meals. It had become the heartbeat of her new life. Sunlight slanted through curtains of her own sewing. The marigolds blooming at her window returned each year, a persistent splash of gold, a reminder that beauty could spring from even the humblest soil. Ethan, too, grew. He was taller now, his voice losing the softness of childhood, but his trust in Lisa only deepened. Their bond, strengthened by adversity, was visible in small, everyday moments. A shared joke while folding laundry, debates over what toppings to put on Friday night pizza, the unspoken agreement to always be honest with each other, especially when life was hard. Lisa had worked to make sure that Ethan's innocence survived the bitterness of the past. Where awkwardness or shame might have taken root, she replaced it with honesty, compassion, and determination. He was thriving, not in spite of what they'd been through, but in some quiet way because of it. Forgiveness, Lisa realized, was not about condoning what had happened or reopening the wounds that had so nearly undone her. She did not reach some grand epiphany in a single moment. Rather, understanding grew slowly, layered in the pauses between busy days and sleepless nights. Sometimes it was triggered by a memory or a scent, a whiff of aftershave, the sound of a song Tom used to sing. And sometimes it was a result of her own hard work, a reflection after reading a book on loss, a passage underlined in her notebook, a phrase that resonated like a bell in the silence. Forgiving Tom and Jenny was, in the end, less about them and more about herself. She found she could think of them now not as enemies or even as the architects of her pain, but as people with flaws larger than their intentions. She was not naive. She remembered the tears, the lonely nights, her anger. But what surprised her most was how little bitterness she carried now. The tightness in her chest had gradually eased, replaced by the steadiness of having survived, having rebuilt, and having refused to become hardened. Lisa sometimes saw Tom and Jenny from a distance, around town or at school functions. They were quieter now, less certain in their movements, as if they too were living with the consequences of their choices. There was the inevitable awkwardness of those encounters, but also a rare sense of mutual recognition. A glance exchanged, not quite warm, but not hostile. She realized in time that neither of them had truly found happiness in the aftermath. Their relationship bore the mark of guilt and exclusion, altered irreparably by the decisions they'd made. They carried their own wounds, and Lisa, in forgiving, quietly acknowledged their pain as well. Her own growth, however, was what mattered most. The hardest lessons about trust, loss, and letting go began to blossom into strength she could draw from. Again and again, Lisa finished her online social work degree, then took a position at a nonprofit dedicated to helping women and families recover from trauma. Her days grew full and purposeful, counseling those in crisis, advocating for resources, speaking to groups about healing and boundaries. Every story she heard was different, but there was a through line of hope and resilience that ran through them all, echoing her own journey. The friendships Lisa cultivated were deeper and more honest than those of her past. She discovered new allies in the single mothers at Ethan's school, in neighbors who became confidants, and in the co-workers who admired her directness and humor. Vulnerability ceased to be something she avoided. It became the foundation of her relationships. She learned that showing her pain did not make her weaker. It invited others to be real as well, and that reciprocal support became a gentle web that held her fast on the days when old doubts crept in. Lisa and Ethan made new traditions and held to them. Mother and son road trips to the state park, rainy days spent building blanket forts, winter evenings devoted to books and games. The rhythm of their lives was one of intention. Every shared meal, every whispered good night, a defiant answer to the chaos that once threatened to tear them apart. As for the broader neighborhood, perspectives shifted over time. Lisa's steadiness and willingness to help others slowly replaced the unspoken judgment and gossip that had trailed in the wake of her divorce. At the corner diner, her story was no longer a cautionary tale or whispered scandal, but an example of a woman's ability to endure, to forgive without forgetting, and to move forward with dignity. Closure, Lisa understood, is never perfect. There were still moments, especially in the quiet late at night, when she wondered what might have been, or revisited old pain. But those moments grew further apart and held less sway. Her sense of peace came not from forgetting, but from reclaiming control over her narrative. The chapter of betrayal was not the end, but the turning point in a much larger story, one that she was now writing for herself. One spring evening, while watching Ethan ride his bike beneath a sky streaked with pink and gold, Lisa felt a kind of certainty she had never known before. She knew who she was, she knew what she deserved, and what she would no longer accept. She looked at her son, their future unfolding, and smiled, not for what had been lost, but for all she had found in its place. Forgiveness was never about absolution for Tom and Jenny. It was about setting herself free, about no longer allowing old wounds to control the shape of her days. Growth was about transformation, taking fractured parts and building something stronger, imbued with compassion, wisdom, and hope. In the end, Lisa's life stood as its own answer to the pain she had endured. She was not the person she had been before the betrayal, nor was she merely what she had suffered. She had blossomed into someone more complex, more patient, and ultimately more joyful, a woman whose strength was measured not by what she had survived, but by how she had chosen to live every day after. And so, Within that small, sunlit apartment,
We
in
know
the
you were
laughter
there.
and peace she shared with Ethan, Lisa found the real ending she deserved. A life defined by forgiveness, maturity, and the unshakable power of her own becoming.